A rocket attack on the Baghdad airport kills Iran's most revered military leader.
Iran's parliament has passed a bill designating all U.S. forces terrorists.
The world is on edge tonight after Iran made good on its promise, launching a revenge attack on the United States.
The U.S. is sending at least 3,000 soldiers to the Middle East.
World War III is beginning to trend on social media, and the U.S. killing of Iran's General Qasem Soleimani has brought tensions in the Middle East to a new level.
At least 8 people have died in devastating floods around the Indonesian capital, Jakarta.
Flash flood in Indonesia has left at least 16 people dead and 23 missing.
Devastating fires in Australia, killing at least 18 people, forcing tens of thousands from their homes.
Where thousands of firefighters and first responders are battling unprecedented wildfires. At least 24 dead, more than 12 million acres destroyed.
When I put this on here, you can see all the areas that they're dealing with wildfires all along most of the coastline, some inland as well.
Now, Australia's bushfires have burnt through 8 billion hectares of land since September. Remarkably, smoke can now be seen 12,000 kilometres away in Argentina and also in Chile. New research has found that the crisis killed and displaced 3 billion animals. That's 3 times worse than previously thought.
Saudi Arabia has suffered from hailstorm and torrential rainfall at several parts of the country.
A dangerous virus is spreading rapidly in China, and U.S. officials are very worried that it could come here. 3 people have already died from this illness, which has spread to at least 3 other Asian countries.
Fast-breaking developments in the coronavirus emergency in the U.S. and around the world. The number of cases soaring just today.
A quarter of the world's population is now living under some form of lockdown due to coronavirus. More than 3 billion people in almost 70 countries and territories have been asked to stay at home.
This morning, ICUs across the country say they're crippled by a crush of patients as pandemic-related hospitalizations hit an all-time high.
Countries around the world are struggling to keep up with the coronavirus pandemic. Global stock markets have had a turbulent week with some of the worst losses in over 30 years.
Davina, Donald Trump has become just the 3rd US president in history to be impeached.
After last night's vote, the fate of the now impeached president will be decided in the Senate.
In the last half hour, the US Senate has found President Trump not guilty of abuse of power and the obstruction of Congress in his historic impeachment trial.
The price of oil has collapsed to a record low as demand dries up and storage runs out. The price of a barrel of West Texas Intermediate, which is the benchmark for US oil, today traded as low as minus $40 a barrel.
That's the first time in history the price has turned negative. So this means producers ended up paying buyers more than $30 a barrel to get oil off their hands.
Thousands in the Philippines were forced to evacuate this week after a volcano blanketed parts of the country with ash.
This is how Taal Island looked before the volcanic eruption. And here's how it looks now. The once verdant Philippine jungle now so heavily laden with volcanic ash that it resembles the surface of the moon. Here, a once vibrant community church now looks like an archaeological site. Building after building buried under sulfurous ash.
You see this house is completely covered in ash. The roof has collapsed in on itself under the weight. And here, another sign of everyday life before the eruption, a satellite dish completely caked in volcanic ash.
India and Pakistan are facing their worst plague of locusts in decades. Authorities in both countries fear a food security crisis.
Just half a square mile of swarm has up to 80 million locusts packed in it. They are wreaking havoc from Africa to Asia to the Middle East.
What could be worse than a plague of locusts? How about an invasion by so-called murder hornets?
This is the murder hornet, one of the deadliest insects on our planet.
They kill massive amounts of honeybees. These things can even be deadly to humans. And now, for the first time, they have made their way to America.
Cyclone Amphan, the first super cyclonic storm in the Bay of Bengal for 20 years, has made landfall in Bangladesh and India in the last few hours. It's being categorized as an extremely severe weather system with winds gusting up to 185 kilometers per hour. That's the equivalent of a Category 5 hurricane. The cyclone system is around 500 kilometers in diameter.
Beirut has been hit by a massive explosion.
Much of Beirut is shattered this morning by one of the most powerful peacetime explosions ever. This is the port as a fire rages, popping and sparking. The flames swell to a noisy roar until the second blast. Other angles show the blast wave crumbling buildings like sandcastles. Traveling faster than the speed of sound, people couldn't get out of the way of the blast. Then came the bang. Filmed from boats, too, from what they thought was a safe distance. Whoa! A mushroom cloud hung over Beirut.
Tear gas once again shrouds the streets of Hong Kong. Protests returned after China pushed for a strict new national security law for the territory under cover of the coronavirus.
It's 45 years since the last deadly clash between India and China. 45 years. We know something happened in the mountains of disputed Kashmir. No shots were fired, but soldiers clashed and died. There are claims brutal, basic weapons were used. Two nuclear powers were in hand-to-hand combat, and both blame the other.
India has spoken about its fatalities being 20. The Chinese side has been very tight-lipped about their fatalities. US intelligence has information that there are at least 35 fatalities suffered on the Chinese side.
A massive sandstorm hit the Turkish capital Ankara, enveloping the streets with large dust clouds affecting daily life in the city.
3 people have died following a plane accident in Istanbul.
A Pakistan International Airlines plane with more than 100 people on board has crashed into a residential area in the city of Karachi.
Deadly plane crash in India. Authorities say at least 17 people were killed, including both pilots. 123 injured. The Air India passenger jet skidding off the runway, breaking apart, trying to land in heavy rain.
A Ukrainian passenger jet plane has crashed shortly after takeoff from Tehran, killing at least 170 passengers and crew.
It was an Iranian missile that brought down that passenger jet that crashed outside Tehran.
Iran now admitting it shot down a Ukrainian passenger plane by mistake.
An old conflict has boiled over into new violence as Armenia and Azerbaijan confront each other over the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region. Both sides are using heavy artillery and have reported casualties.
This is video released by Azerbaijan's Ministry of Defense showing artillery strikes on Wednesday. We're told nearly 100 people have been killed.
A strong earthquake in the Aegean Sea has shaken Turkey and Greece. Rescuers are searching for survivors after the magnitude 7 quake.
In Turkey, where at least 22 people are now dead and more than 900 injured.
And have a look at this video showing Mexico's Popocatépetl volcano putting on a spectacular show with its latest eruption. Ash column rose nearly 5,000 feet.
In Puerto Rico at this hour, a strong earthquake struck overnight, causing a blackout across the U.S. territory. The magnitude 6.4 earthquake hit just south of the island. Now it comes one day after a 5.8 magnitude quake damaged homes and caused landslides there.
Hurricane Hannah slamming into the Texas shore, winds of 90 miles an hour. Strong winds and flooding rains, storm surge across more than 100 miles of the Texas coastline. In Port Mansfield, Texas, the wind ripping buildings apart. You see it right there. And take a look at the radar, the dangerous eye wall moving inland at this hour.
2 avalanches in eastern Turkey have killed tens of people as a second downslide happened while people were working to rescue victims of the first.
Britain is no longer part of the European Union. It marks the end of more than 3 years of fighting over Brexit and the start of an uncertain future for the country.
This morning, for the first time in 47 years, people in the UK woke up no longer as members of the EU, but just as divided as before on Brexit.
Landslides in Norway. More than a dozen buildings were crushed and buried in mud after a whole hillside collapsed some 25 kilometers outside of the capital city. Rescuers say the ground is still moving, making it very dangerous for the search for survivors.
Major fire now has broken out at Ajman market area in Dubai.
Cities across the United States remain in a state of high tension tonight as the country braces itself for another wave of protests over the death of George Floyd.
Overnight, Minneapolis on fire. protesters leaving an auto parts store in flames. Others seen looting a local Target.
Minneapolis today, with its charred remnants of last night's rioting, the fury evident at every corner. Demonstrators had rampaged. The violence, the anger, and the flames, at times well out of control, continued until dawn.
The death of George Floyd has sparked similar scenes across Europe and beyond. In Australia, organizers say tens of thousands of protesters gathered. In Brazil, demonstrators carried banners reading Black Lives Matter. And in South Korea, protesters marched through the capital for the second day in a row.
The British economy is heading for an unprecedented recession. It says the economy is on course for the sharpest annual contraction for 300 years, with the coronavirus epidemic dramatically reducing jobs and incomes.
The United States and Germany have posted their biggest economic decline in decades.
India's GDP has crashed 23.9% in the April to June period.
For the first time since World War II, Wimbledon will be cancelled over COVID-19 concerns.
The T20 World Cup 2020 now stands postponed.
The European Championships this summer will be postponed.
The 2020 Summer Olympics, now the latest major sports cancellation caused by the global COVID-19 pandemic.
Buildings ripped from their foundations and floating away. This morning, the residents of Midland, Michigan reeling from cataclysmic flooding after 2 dam failures.
The Amazon rainforest is on fire again. Whole mountains, hills and valleys engulfed in smoke. Some of these fires are absolutely huge, stretching as far as the eye can see.
The nation of Brazil is witnessing a unique play of fire and ice. As one part of the country reels under devastating forest fires, the other part is rejoicing some drizzles of snow.
Heavy rain has caused widespread disruption in Brazil as floodwater engulfed cars and communities. The city's mayor says some areas received half a month's rain in a single day.
Terror attack outside Paris. A teacher decapitated on the street right in front of his school.
Thousands gathered in central Paris to pay their respects to Samuel Paty, who was killed after showing cartoons of the Muslim prophet Muhammad in a class on freedom of expression.
French President Emmanuel Macron said that he was murdered because he taught freedom of expression. Macron also mentioned that France was engaged in an existential battle against radical Islamist terrorism.
For these protesters, the French president is the enemy. Posters and effigies of Emmanuel Macron have been subjected to their wrath. In Dakar, they attacked with shoes and brooms. In Jakarta, they tried a mock beheading. In Gaza, they burned an effigy of Macron.
Muslims around the world have descended on the streets. They're calling French President Emmanuel Macron the devil. They are demanding a complete boycott of French products.
As tensions remain high in Delhi, violent clashes between Hindus and Muslims have rocked the city for days. Entire neighbourhoods ripped apart as mobs roam the streets.
One of the world's largest typhoons of the year, Typhoon Goni, struck the Philippines. The super typhoon is the 18th tropical storm to hit the country this year, and it comes only days after Typhoon Malave swept through the country.
The most powerful storm on Earth this year hit the small island of Catanduanes just before 5 a.m. this morning. Strong winds whipped and lashed trees and electricity lines. Flash floods inundated rivers and roads. People clambered onto roofs of their homes to stay above the waterline. More than 20 million people are in the path of the typhoon.
The coronavirus is hitting the airline sector very hard. This we know, with the top trade group predicting it could cost the industry $113 billion.
This morning, more than 40,000 airline workers are out of a job.
This will be the worst year in the history of aviation, with passenger numbers and revenues half of what they were last year.
A powerful 7.5 magnitude earthquake struck Mexico's southern state of Oaxaca.
The tremors knocked out power and caused severe damage in some areas. Pavements wobbled hundreds of kilometers away in Mexico City.
Heavy rainfall triggered a major landslide in Kerala's Idukki district on Friday and has been facing a flood-like situation due to excessive rainfall over the past few days. Torrential rainfall in the state has now left many low-lying areas and floodplains at the risk of complete inundation.
3 major fires are blanketing the greater Los Angeles area.
Every 24 hours, there is an area the size of Washington, D.C. burning down.
America is in uncharted territory. Joe Biden has won, but the president believes this.
They're trying to steal an election. They're trying to rig an election, and we can't let that happen.
The president has not conceded, is not helping the transition of power.
It has been more than a week since voters went to the polls, and the results, well, that depends on whom you ask and which party they belong to.
So is American democracy in crisis?
A gas pipeline exploded in Nigeria, killing many people.
In an instant, 100,000 square meters of Lagos, schools, homes, businesses were destroyed.
Phoenix officially hit 100 degrees for the first time this year.
116, that's a new record, huh?
That's a record. And setting a record for the date, another day with record heat.
We sure know how to smash records lately.
July of 2020 going down as the hottest month ever for Phoenix.
Our record high for the day.
It's the hottest summer that we've ever seen.
Record high territory this afternoon.
Another record-setting day. Friday was one for the record books.
There's a new record high for today as well.
Breaking records on a daily basis.
Another record-setting day. Another record-setting afternoon. Another record-setting day.
It just never ends.
Another day of record-setting heat. Record heat out there.
A bunch of record highs.
It's another day, it's another record broken.
The summer of 2020 will go down as the hottest summer ever. We set many records.
Antarctica experienced its warmest day ever recorded in February, with the mercury rising to 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Warming temperatures are helping the formation and spread of green snow. The phenomenon is becoming so widespread that it's even visible from space.
East Africa is in the thick of a brutally unusual rainy season. For weeks, torrential downpours have triggered landslides and flash flooding. The death toll stands at 250, with some 3 million affected.
In Kenya, more than 100 people are reported to have died and at least 250,000 have been displaced by flooding.
Making landfall this evening, Hurricane Delta. Winds up to 100 miles per hour. This is the 10th named storm to hit the U.S. this season alone. That's an all-time record.
A major river in northeastern China has been struck by even more flooding. Heavy rains upstream have caused a dam to collapse, and the overflow has soaked 10,000 acres of crops.
At least 26 fishermen have been reported missing and 2 dead after Typhoon Goni makes its landfall in Vietnam's central coastline. With wind speeds of up to 135 kilometers per hour, the typhoon has already wreaked havoc in the coastal regions.
The U.S. Navy has finally acknowledged that videos appearing to show UFOs flying through the air are real. They don't call them UFOs. They call them unidentified aerial phenomena. The several videos they're talking about were recorded years ago by fighter pilots.
Images of that rotating thing captured by U.S. Navy aircraft, sensors locking in on the target. Commander David Fravor saw it firsthand during a training mission, describing it like a 40-foot-long tic-tac, maneuvering rapidly and changing direction.
Aliens exist and President Trump knows about it. That's according to Israel's former space security chief in an interview with an Israeli newspaper.
A large meteor from outer space fell in Nigeria, causing several houses to be destroyed.
The lakes of Kenya's Rift Valley are rising, inundating homes and businesses. Two lakes, Lake Baringo and Lake Bogoria, have grown so much that they run the risk of merging together. But Lake Bogoria is a saline lake, while Lake Baringo is a freshwater lake, providing drinking water to animals and people. It would be an ecological disaster if the two lakes meet.
Coronavirus infections are approaching 80 million worldwide. Global deaths, meanwhile, have reached 1.7 million.
A growing number of countries are banning travel from the United Kingdom to block a new strain of coronavirus that is sweeping across southern England.
Treacherous winter weather has killed at least 10 climbers in the mountains outside the Iranian capital Tehran after an avalanche and blizzards.
Now, at least 27 people have been killed in an attack on the airport that serves the Yemeni city of Aden. The explosions happened soon after a plane carrying the country's new government touched down.
A powerful earthquake has struck central Croatia. The magnitude 6.4 event caused widespread destruction, collapsing roofs, the facades of buildings, and entire buildings.
People on Hawaii's Big Island are being urged to stay indoors after the Kilauea volcano erupted again. It began erupting late yesterday, about 1 hour after a 4.4 magnitude earthquake rocked the area.
If you think 2020 is done being cruel to you, wait till you hear the next story. And I don't like telling it, but
This is what's happening in our world. Brain-eating amoeba is spreading in the United States. I'm not making this up. Scientists say there has been an increase in the number of cases being reported from Midwestern states.